Welcome to A New Era of Dentistry, the ultimate podcast for uncovering the latest trends, breakthroughs, and real-life stories in the dental industry, hosted by Ashley Bond with Wisdom, along with co-host Stephanie Neville. This podcast will explore hot topics, chat with industry leaders, and share the stories that are redefining how dental professionals enhance patient care and the dental practice environment. Let's get started and reshape the future of dental care together, one episode at a time.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of A New Era of Dentistry. I am so excited to have guest and friend here, Teresa Duncan. She is the president of Odyssey Management, the host of Nobody Told Me That and Chew on This, insurance guru, queen, speaker, author. Teresa Duncan, welcome to the podcast.
I am so happy to be here. You know why I'm happy? Because I'm not hosting. Like, I can sit back and talk. This is great. I'm not thinking of all the stuff I have to do on the back end with the podcast, like I'm sure you're thinking about. This is like a vacation for me. So, but seriously, congratulations on the launch of the podcast. You've been killing it. And thank you for inviting me. I mean, it means the world to me.
Of course. There's no one we rather have on than you, and we're excited to just dig in. And, you know, I'll be up seeing you soon with your Insurance in a Day event that you have going on. And you're always out there speaking and telling all of dental offices and speakers and coaches just everything we need to know about insurance. So thank you for all that you're putting out there.
Sure. That's actually one of the more fun things about what I'm doing now. I'm not in the office as much or doing the training, but just being able to make sure everybody in our industry is aware of like the gotchas that are coming. And that's been actually pretty nice. I used to think being in office and doing all this training, like I used to get such a high from it, but I think doing this, maybe I'm just getting older and don't want to be on the road more. Maybe that's what it is. But this is way more fun, like kind of just sharing all the knowledge. I love it.
And I almost feel like you have a crystal ball on things to prepare and watch out for. I mean, people, when you have something to say, we are always listening. I guess, how do you keep yourself so educated in space? I mean, I know you're always going and learning and going to the events that are necessary with coding, but how do you have your crystal ball?
I'm glad you asked this question because, believe it or not, this is a question I get all the time. And this is a good way for me to like just say, go listen to Ashley's podcast, because it's a lot of work, first of all. So my crystal ball isn't totally crystal. It's still got some fog in it, but I feel like that's just the industry. Like there's still a lot of, it depends. And, you know, when I first started 30 years ago, I don't want to go too crazy, a long time ago, it was so straightforward. It was either you were in network or you weren't. It was either 80% or not. And now like there's so many, it depends. And, you know, from answering questions, it's never like a straightforward. We were talking about this in sort of the pregame of like, you get an email and it's never just like, yes, do this. It's yes, do this, if this, then that. And that is why I think we're so like frustrated nowadays. It's not as straightforward as it used to be. So in order for me to stay on top of it, I do an awful lot of reading. I would say the first hour to an hour and a half of my day is spent with my coffee and my computer, just reading. I get lots of different newsletters. I get lots of different feeds from different companies. And I'm scanning like what's going on in the podcast world, because our dental podcast world is great. It's very robust. I can't listen to everything, but I'm looking to see what the hot topics are. And so it's an awful lot of reading. And then I have, used to be 4, but now it's about 6 just by default. There's 6 offices. I call them beta offices, where I just check in with them on a regular basis. So once a week, I'm checking in with 1 or 2 offices and just saying, hey, what's going on? And they're very busy offices. So I feel like between them, if something comes up in more than one office, it's going to be something that's going to hit. And then the Facebook groups, you know, there's the Facebook groups that are good to read. And then there's the Facebook groups where I just go, okay, that's going to be an issue in an email, you know? So there's that. And then of course, the bigger piece that I don't think an office manager has the time to do this. So that's why I feel like I do it so that you don't have to, is I keep up with the insurance side. So I'm a member of the National Association of Dental Plans. There's not a lot of provider members unless you're a DSO. I'm a member of the American Association of Dental Consultants, which are the consultant reviewers. And then I'm a member of a bunch of different medical organizations. So writing a lot of checks, but really what I'm doing is keeping up on policy, keeping up on laws that are going to affect us, because when you started in your dad's practice, you did not have to know your state laws very well.
Right.
Like it just, now you need to know does this affect me because this is a self-funded plan? Is this a virtual credit card? Is this,
Mhm.
there's all these different legalities and regulations that come into play. So thank God I'm a researcher. And I think that's really what I do. So for those of you that are like, how does she stay on top of it? It's not hard. All the resources are there. It's time consuming. And if you're running a busy practice, somebody calls out. I mean, how on earth? If I were still in practice, there's no way. There's no way I could have kept on it. And do you remember being a fan of Insurance Solutions newsletter? Do you remember that
Oh my
newsletter?
goodness.
Yeah.
I would look forward to it
Oh
coming
my.
every single month.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yes.
for new people listening, there was a lady in Washington State who published it, and it came via mail. And when that newsletter came, I didn't open it right away. I put it on the desk because I was so busy, and I would open it up. And did you ever take it home and be like, oh, like just read it? Like that was,
yeah, and like highlighter out. I mean, it was
amazing.
I couldn't wait.
And there was no real there was nobody out there like distilling like that. And then I think Practice Booster ended up purchasing it. And I haven't read it in years, but it's one of those things where I remember being so hungry for that kind of knowledge, not because I needed it to really be exceptional at my job, but like it was such a curiosity of, oh my gosh, our industry needs to be a watch out for this and we need to watch out for that. And I think those are the people in my audiences that vibe with me the most, is like, we need to know what's coming. It's not really like, how do we do this allocation of payment? Like, what is going to come down the pike that's going to affect us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I remember my father subscribed to that. I waited for it every month. And then if there's ever an insurance issue, because you could call them and ask questions if you had if you paid for that part of it. There's no one else that I knew to call at that time. So I'd call Insurance Solutions and ask my insurance questions. But that's when it was so much easier back then too.
Yeah.
It wasn't as complicated as it is now. And I think too, that's why, outsourcing has even become bigger in the industry, is because of how difficult insurance is to, like you said, stay on top of not only the patients, but all the insurance changes and then all the duties that come with everything with insurance. It's a lot for 1-2 people to handle.
Well, I mean, think of it this way. There's just a law that was passed in Ohio. Okay. So in Ohio, you can charge a patient. Again, it's only for fully funded plans because it only applies to the state, right? The plans that aren't self-funded. So you can charge full fee, but in the law, in a very little piece of the law, which I don't think is going to get distributed, and that's what bothers me here. I screenshot it because I got to put it in my next newsletter. This is mind-boggling to me. It says the dentist has to post the following notice in a conspicuous place if they're going to do this. So we actually have to have a notice that says, important, this dental care provider does not accept the fee schedule set by your insurer for dental care for services that are not covered benefits, blah, blah, blah. It's like 2 very long sentences. I can guarantee you that this is going to go through, and how many offices are going to actually have this posted? Come on.
None.
Right. So that's why I got to send out the newsletter and be like, okay, go to Canva and put this in and make a sign.
Oh, man. Well, that's why everyone needs to subscribe to your newsletter if you're not already, because that's where you're going to hear all the updates. And it's just continuous updates that keep coming. And it's not like every office is called and told about these updates.
Right.
You're just supposed to read the fine prints.
Yeah. And so say you're in Ohio and you're like, holy cow, I didn't know anything about this. You as the manager you can try to subscribe. I believe most of the state organizations let you subscribe to their newsletters. I believe they have members only newsletters, but you might want to check and see. But you can always call and see, look, I'm a manager. How do I stay on top of that? They may shoot. I've known some states that will shoot you, a registration link. So I obviously don't live in all states, but there's quite a few states that have said, you know what, let's just sign you up for it. So get on these newsletters, get on your state newsletter for sure. And get on, if you're participating with any insurance, you need to be on their newsletter. And quite frankly, I sign up for all of them anyways, because I'm not in practice. So just the best way. And then as many newsletters as possible. Yours is helpful. Amanda Demora's is helpful. You've got a lot of different people that send out newsletters. So you got to stay on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking with my dad's practice and back in the day, the good old days, even with sending claims, I mean, narratives have switched so much. You used to, when I first started, every crown got the same narrative. It was very basic on, decay, fracture, or crown was needed, not detailed at all. And now you need your clinical notes. I would love for you to dig in a little bit about narratives and how our offices can potentially avoid some of these audits that are happening.
So narratives, I just would want everyone to let go of the narratives. I mean, narratives, the only time I'm using, and I'm still submitting claims to my old boss, so I should just say that. I mean, he's not high volume at all, not participating with any insurance company, so it's admittedly a lot easier, but I'm still doing it. So the only time I want you to use a narrative is when you're writing an appeal that's above and beyond. But quite frankly, even that appeal, I don't think you need it. I'm going to make a bold statement, but I'm comfortable saying this. If you are out of network with a carrier, so let me just be clear. If you are out of network with a carrier, try not sending in a narrative or clinical notes. Try just sending in an x-ray, a radiograph, a supporting image. Okay, so radiograph, intraoral image. Just try it. So what I've been finding with my test cases and with our own practice is that when you're out of network, obviously you're not scrutinized as much. That's a little secret that not a lot of people know. So when you're in network, of course, they scrutinize the heck out of you. Try sending in just the radiograph. So hopefully that lightens your load, because there are tons of people out there that don't send in narratives. Or not narratives, clinical notes. I don't send them in as often at all as I used to. Now, when we were in network back in 2018, it started to change. Delta of Northeast is the big one that switched and said, we don't want your narratives anymore, because it was people like you and me sending in the same narrative or customizing a little bit, And I say this in my classes. I remember reading Buckle and it was spelled Buckle. Like, of course, it wasn't done by a doctor, right? So clinical notes should be as complete as possible. And so what I want you to do is just take a screenshot of the clinical notes. Now, that is enough. Like, we should not be writing any narratives. And quite frankly, we're not clinical, Ashley, you and I. I mean, we can play at it, but we're not clinical. It shouldn't be us. So good supporting images, which really, to me, ends up being a big, big deal, along with not the clinical notes being, they're not as detailed as possible. Template them out. Get the clinical notes written really well, and then screenshot the clinical notes. But you can always try to send in just the x-ray and not the clinical notes. So now if they come back to you and say, no, we need the clinical notes, well, there's my little, tip off that, okay, MetLife in network, they want clinical notes. So then we learn the workarounds with that. The clinical notes have to have the reason that you're doing the procedure. It has to have the expected outcomes. It has to say, patient agreed, understands risk, consequences, and all of that. And one thing that one of the consultant reviewers was sharing with me is that he noticed in the clinical notes for this one particular doctor that there was never any blood pressure. There was never any indication of oral history being reviewed. And he called the doctor after noticing this and said, why aren't you including all of this? This is part of the record. And the doctor's like, we don't take blood pressure in here. And he said, I'm not going to tell you how to run your practice, but if the state board knew that you weren't taking blood pressure, you'd be in a lot of trouble. So he's like, I'm not going to turn you in, but I could, and you would be in deep trouble. And I don't know what happened after that. He just said it, but the point is, this consultant reviewer, who's actually still a practicing dentist, can see all of the things that could get you audited. And most doctors think that their notes are good enough, and they might be, but sometimes they're not. So you see it, don't you? Like, the notes are like dreadful.
Oh, yes. I feel that sometimes we have a hard time is conveying the importance, where I don't know why in, dentistry chart notes have not been top of mind always. And so trying to convey, like, this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be a fear tactic, but this is the doctor's license on the line. Like, you need to be documenting what is happening and in detail.
Yeah.
So we actively promote great documentation, because it's not only protects the office and the doctor, but it's going to help them get paid faster. And so little things you can change on the front end, like templates.
Yeah.
Which is, yes, it's going to take you a little bit in the beginning to set it up, but then once it's set up, it's set.
Right.
And then everything else will be so much faster afterwards.
Well, and here's something that I was planning on doing for a friend of mine who just called me up in like 2 weeks ago. So I actually need to get going on this. And he was like, hey, what do you think about AI coming up with my templates? And I said, okay, why don't you add like weeks of your notes, just add in note, and have AI come up with a template for you. And my thought was like, okay, if you're copying and pasting, can't you see the template? But I think what they want is like an official like template that they can put in there.
Right.
I mean, could AI do that? Sure. I mean, I know we can talk about AI in a minute, but like you could find templates. I mean, Andre Chardin of the EagleSoft Field Guide, even though it's EagleSoft, he sells templates. You can put them in there. Dana Johnson with Navoni has templates. Like you can find templates.
Oh,
The
yeah.
thing is, you got to use them. Then, of course, if it doesn't apply, just backspace it out. But it does take having an assistant. I really think the doctors that are going to do the best at this is having an assistant that actually cares. And, you know, right now we're not blessed with an overflow of assistants in our industry. So that's a whole different conversation that we can have. I know you're a huge fan of AI. So am I. How are you using it in your job?
Everyday life. It's all, I mean, right. It's up on my tab right now. I always have it open. It helps me personally. I mean, come up with, you know, my daughter's having a birthday party. Help me come up with, you know, birthday games.
Yeah.
I mean, as little as like that in my personal life to help respond to emails. You can create your own GPTs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a step 2 into getting into Chat GPT, but you can upload documentation on, hey, this is how I write. Or here's some past work that we've done. Now, this is what I want you to do, like an appeal writer. Like, help me write appeals. Here are some templates we've used in the past. Never put PHI information in this, of course.
Yeah.
But when I used to write appeals, sometimes the hardest part is starting. Like, you know, like, oh, I had to write this appeal. Like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
And so if you put in a little bit of information on, hey, this is why the patient's getting the crown. Again, no patient information, but this is why they're getting the crown. Here's the code we're using. This is why it was denied.
Yeah.
It can spit you out an appeal that then you can say, like, don't sound so much like a robot.
Right.
It can make it more concise. It can make it sound like you. So we definitely are utilizing AI as much as we can for cases like that. But I know insurance is using AI as well.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear, just with the power of AI, how you've seen it change the game when it comes to offices, but then on the insurance side, how they're using it and what we also need to watch out for.
So there's a huge myth out there that AI is being used to deny all of our claims. And I'll see throw off comments in Facebook that's like, oh, it's just the AI denying it. So AI has been around in claim adjudication for a very long time. And in fact, it's more like data filtering. I mean, clean claims, that's AI, you know, in a way. It's just identifying it. So look, if you don't have the right information, if your procedure codes don't match, if you're giving a quadrant when it should be a tooth, that's not AI denying your claims. That's AI catching them before you got a denial back. Hopefully your clearinghouse is using that to catch it before it goes and gets sent. And there's some clearinghouses are better than others and some utilize it better, but you will find the one that you want, right? I can speak to AI being used in images. And there's actually a podcast episode where Dr. Mike Barneve came on to Nobody Told Me That. And he is not only a former dental director for Adelta, but he's also Pearl's clinical director. And he talked about AI and how it was used. And the big takeaway from there is that a denial of a service cannot come from a robot or an AI. There's a human that has to approve that denial. Now, can AI send it over and say, we don't think it meets the criteria? Sure. But the doctor is the one that ultimately has to do it. So there's no like blanket, like just mass sending of denials via AI, because that actually breaks a lot of insurance laws. So is that going to change? I don't know. That's another thing on the back end, is that there's a ton of regulation going on right now, or proposed regulation on AI usage in claim adjudication on the medical side, which is going to trickle down to us.
Right. Trickle down.
So is AI analyzing your radiographs? Yes. And so here's actually a wake-up call. If you're using AI in your office to analyze your images, you're not going to be the one that AI catches on the insurance side. So I've said for years, whomever is using AI upstream is going to be the winner. So upstream meaning the point of the patient contact, which is you in your office. So I do think most offices have to put into their budget to be using some sort of AI image enhancement. Okay, so I'm using a lot of Pearl. I'm working a lot with Pearl. So they're my pick for now. And I tell Pearl too, like, dude, I got to keep an eye on what's coming up behind you, because somebody may come up. This is a very, very fast moving industry. They're getting FDA clearances for so many different things. Okay, so back to the insurance side. So they can flag it and say, look, this radiograph does not support the way to pay out the procedures. So is it because truly the insurance company doesn't believe that it meets the criteria? Or is it because your radiograph is poo-poo? which is usually the case. So
It is.
the overbites or the open bites, the overlap, periapicals, cone cuts, periapicals that don't show the root. So here's the other thing is that the radiograph must be within a certain time period. So default is 2 years. It must be at least 2 years from the date of service. But a lot of them are, as you know, the carriers, a lot of them are switching to 12 months. So you have to have a current radiograph. So when AI is denying your x-rays or denying your services, I need to take a look at what you actually submitted. And believe me, I like saying, okay, this is totally the insurance's fault. Like, I would love to be able to say that, but you know, from looking at it, it's probably 50-50. Maybe the AI got a little bit aggressive, or not AI, maybe the insurance got a little bit aggressive and you've got a doctor that denies everything. Are there consultant reviewers out there that deny everything? Absolutely. I've met them. They have a reason for every denial. Their denial rates are through the roof. But are they like, I don't know, like, do they pull up to the table and be like, I can't wait to see how many offices I can upset today? I don't know. That's not real.
No, that's not what we see. I mean,
Yeah.
I say this a lot, but the number one reason for denials, what we see is it's administrative issues.
Yeah.
So it's incorrect patient demographic, incorrect insurance demographic, or not adequate documentation.
Yeah.
So whether that's x-rays or information that we know, if it's a replacement crown, you need the initial date. Like things that we just know have to be on the claim that aren't. And that's why it's being denied. We also, of course, see medical necessity denials, but I would say that's more rare than the first that I mentioned, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's about empowering your team, empowering those at the front office on, this is what we need. There's so much to focus on, though.
I know.
That is hard.
I know.
It's hard.
It is
when
hard.
You're doing so much.
And people walk out of my classes with like a very long to-do list. I give a lot of homework. And I always say, look, you got to like revisit this in a month and pick it back up. Because if you go back and implement everything, like you probably get off a client call and the client's like, oh my God, I have so much to do. And they go crazy and then they end up, losing track. Somebody calls in sick, patient gets mad, whatever. It's really tough to be an office manager, insurance coordinator nowadays. It's super, super tough. So, I mean, hats off to all of you guys still in the thick of it.
Oh, yeah. And even I like that you mentioned with the dental assistants too, and empowering them to kind of take control of the chair. And if you have someone coming in with a crown and you see, we need a new x-ray.
Yeah.
That needs to be taken before the prep work's done.
Right.
Empowering those assistants to know what to look for, know the documentation that's needed to get claims paid. I mean, they need to be a part of this conversation too. It's not just, the front office team that's in charge of that. It's the whole team that needs to work together to get this information.
I mean, how many insurance coordinators, office managers right now are saying, oh my gosh, I have to, and I used to do this too. We have to go through the whole schedule for the week, make sure we've got an x-ray. And then if we don't have the x-ray, we leave a note that says, please take this. And then they don't. And then you're like, okay. Imagine if your assistant was like, you don't need to do that. I got this. Like, I would be so happy, like instant, like you are my queen.
Yes. And I think it's too, just you almost had to be reminded every day, we would always have that morning huddle, but reminded every day, like, what is our priorities today? Because once the day starts, it can be crazy in the office. Every day was a different fire.
Right.
So bringing the team back, what does each person need to prioritize? I think is helpful. I loved like a checklist. I'm a sucker for a checklist. Even though, a lot of people are paperless now, I still love like the physical checklist, like a patient's coming in. What do I need to look for?
Yeah.
Or a morning huddle sheet that we would fill out of, here are the patients coming in for a crown. Here's who needs a PA. I think it's so important to still have those checklists and those, forms that you fill out in the office. What are your thoughts on using, this is totally off topic, but now, everyone's going paperless. I still love certain things that, is that old school?
No,
like certain
you're talking about the route slip. You're talking about the route slip, right?
Yes, and the route slip.
So, and there's a whole generation of people out there, not even a generation, there's a whole class of people out there who have just started working and they're like, what's a route slip? So a route slip is what we would print out for every patient and it would follow the patient through the office and we would make sure everything that was written on there. So I used to use them. I loved them. We started moving to a comprehensive morning huddle sheet where we could fill it out and it would be posted in the lab. But I will say that some offices, it depends on your office. You have some people that a route slip is going to make them an amazing assistant, an amazing dentist. Without that route slip, it's just not going to happen. They're going to drop balls and all of that. So if you've got somebody that could really benefit by a route slip, who cares if you are printing up some paper? I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Shrink it down. Maybe make it a 3x5 card. I mean, you don't have to go crazy, right? But I really believe that we have to enable, as managers, we have to enable the people who work with us to do the best job. And if one little quirk of their personality is that they can't keep more than 5 things in their brain at one time, let's help them with that. I mean, are they going to like run circles like the Tasmanian devil in the back? If we can do that, yeah, heck yeah, then I'm going to give them a route slip all day long.
Right.
So, you know, what works, everybody's different up there. I mean, to me, the route slip, when I had a new assistant and a new associate joining in, I needed the route slips because I needed to double check everything. So are you going to tell me I'm wasting paper? So what? I don't care. I got to double check things. So what?
Yeah.
You know,
it's worth it in the long run.
I recycle. It goes in the box. We recycle. It's fine.
Exactly. Oh man, I just remember we would have that big box of, I don't know if you ever had in your practice, of the shred box.
The shred box, yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. And
that
then
would get so.
And then it was your job as the manager to find out when the shred event in the community was, right? So you could do that. And then when I heard people come to your office and shred it for you in your office, I was like, what?
It's amazing. Because sometimes it would take hours to shred because we wouldn't have the biggest shredder. And so you'd have to put in a few pieces of paper so it wouldn't get clogged.
No, it would have been easier to get like one of the big gallon drums that like serial killers use and put it in the back and light it on fire. That would have been so much easier.
Or put acid in it and just burn it.
Exactly. Like just do
it. We could bring that to the dental office.
Ashley's shred barrel.
Yes. I love it. Great ideas we have here. So if an office hasn't used AI to help them, what do you think is the best place to start appeals? What's a good entryway into getting started? So
first of all, if you've never done it, go over to ChatGPT, or even, you could even use, I think Bing is set up with AI. I mean, you can use, I mean, it's everywhere, right? So the easiest thing, go to ChatGPT, open up an account. You've got a couple, unless you pay the monthly. I actually use a program. I use Claude and Perplexity. I really love both of those programs along with ChatGPT, but you can go crazy because right now, don't go crazy buying every AI program because there's 5 coming out every day. So stick with one that you like. So what I would do is go over to a provider processing manual for code number 2740. Just test it out. Highlight their clinical guidelines for 2740, the crown. Just highlight it, copy paste it, put it into ChatGPT. So tell ChatGPT, here's the clinical guidelines for this procedure code. Here are our clinical notes for this procedure code. Help us to improve our clinical notes to best match the clinical guidelines. Now, that doesn't mean that every clinical note, you're going to write one that matches. Obviously, it has to match what you see in the mouth. Not every tooth is going to qualify for a crown. The doctor's got their own opinion, whatever. And that's an important thing, Ashley, is that offices need to understand that insurance isn't saying you shouldn't have done the crown. We need to remember that they're making a determination on can they pay for it, not should it have been done. I think a lot of doctors take it personally because it says, we can't release benefits. So what? They can't release benefits. Then the patient, you guys need to have a talk with the patient. So back to the GPT. So put in the description, put in the clinical notes, and then just see what comes out. Okay, so say you're writing an appeal. ChatGPT, here's the notes. Here's the clinical guidelines. We received a denial. How can we improve the clinical notes to obtain payment? Please generate. I say please and thank you. I know I shouldn't have.
Oh, so do I.
But it's, what? We're not supposed to. That actually messes with it. Did you know that?
Oh, does it?
I know, but
I'll be like, I'm sorry.
I can't help it. I still go, oh, those are great. Thank you. Can you do this? And I'm like, I know, I can't help it. So then you put in, please create an appeal letter that I can send in. And it just spits it out, right?
Yeah.
So then you can even say, as it learns more and more and it's taking in more of this information, like say you want to just put in there and say, help me create, just start from scratch. Help me create a good clinical note for scaling and root planing. Just put that in there. And that's how it starts, because then I think the light bulb's going to go off with somebody who's never used ChatGPT. It's really hard to understand it at first. And then you use it for, like you said, you use it for everything.
Everything.
So you put in there, what's a good clinical note for scaling and root planing? And it'll tell you, and you'll be like, oh, but my secret weapon, it's not really secret, is tell me more. Can you expand?
Mm.
Can you give this to me in a bullet point format? And not just for insurance, I've been using it to help offices with management issues, like not because I just do some coaching for some spouses. Like, here's what we can do if this situation comes up. Here's a disciplinary situation. What are the steps? And we do it together. And as a manager, sometimes we don't have people to bounce these things off of, like right in the moment. We don't have time to get on Facebook. Could you say, I'm in Virginia. Is there a state law I need to be aware of? Now, I will say you always have to be careful of all this stuff, like
Double check it.
But for the most part, like if it's not going to get you thrown in jail, you could probably go, okay, I can make a solid, like, this helps me think it through. And these managers are, like you said, their hair's on fire. Every little bit of help you can get, you need it. Take advantage of it. And for right now, I think it's free for a little bit, and then you pay for more.
Right. I think it's worth, I think it's $20-something a month for, the paid version. I think it's definitely worth it for what I do. And then it learns you too, which is the crazy part, is because you log in, it learns the way you think and talk and your industry, which is really neat. But in the future, people that aren't using it now, like, Google's going to be replaced. The way that we're searching is not the way we're going to be searching in the near future. It's going to be this sort of AI back and forth.
Well, traffic is already down for Google search. Traffic is already down. And here's something that's totally not part of the podcast, but if you're paying for Google SEO, you should check with your company right now, because everybody I've talked to, big companies, have noticed that their Google hits, their Google search results have been in the tank the last 2 months. So if you're paying somebody for a lot of SEO and they're not telling you that Google search is down, they're probably not looking at it. It has been down for almost all industries right now. They changed the algorithm. AI is becoming up. So spend your marketing dollars very wisely. Check on that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know you and me, we're going to be seeing each other very soon in your Insurance in a Day event that you're putting on, which I'm so excited for. But where else are you going to be coming up, and how can people reach out to you if they have questions?
So Odyssey MGMT is my website, and I have an events listing page. I'm always giving webinars, so you can always see the replay, see what's coming up. Yeah. I love webinars because I can stay home. Like, I take off the headphones and I'm with my dogs. Like, it's amazing. So I'm going to be at ADA giving management class and insurance basics class too. I'll be at ADOM. I'm always at the American Association of Dental Office Management. If you're in Virginia, I'm at the VDA meeting. So lots of different meetings, lots of different webinars. My 2 podcasts, Chew on This and Nobody Told Me That, are always available. And anytime anybody needs anything, you can send me a contact form. You can even send me a voicemail through my website. You can do that. So lots of ways to find me.
And yes, your podcasts are the go-to. Thanks. Like, if you want to know what's going on in the industry, listen to Teresa's podcast, and definitely reach out to her if you have any additional questions. She is the insurance queen. I think we've officially given you that title. And you get to a crown now. But I really just appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate all the insights that you give, not only to me, but the whole dental industry. You've just really made a big impact in a lot of people's lives. So thank you for all that you do.
Well, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thank you all for joining us, and join us next week when we'll be back.
Thank you for joining us on today's journey through a new era of dentistry with your host, Ashley Bond. With wisdom in their network of industry leaders, each episode offers fresh insights and support in the evolving world of dentistry. Subscribe, stay tuned, and transform your career, practice, and patient experience. Until next time, keep innovating, keep caring, and stay smiling.